Plus Council's presentation this morning. My name is Kim Lapira. I'm with the Martin Architectural Group, and it's really good to see there's so much interest in this topic and in the 55 Plus Council, especially since I'm now serving as the new chair for this council. That being said, if you want to serve in the council or have interest in it, please send your information, your contact information to Griffin Benton. His information will be posted at the end of this presentation. So a little bit about our expert panelists for this morning's presentation. Jim Riviello is the Managing Director of the Martin Architectural Group, and he manages the planning and architectural efforts for Mid-Atlantic throughout the East Coast for Martin. His portfolio ranges from single-family homes such as the renowned Bully Rock Golf Community to LEED registered townhouses and apartments at Whispering Hills in New Jersey to active adult communities such as the condominiums at Carroll Creek. Carol Strong is founder of Spotlight Marketing Services, and as communications and solutions strategist, Karen has worked with age-restricted and targeted communities across the country. She, like Jim, has been an active member of the National NAHB 55 Plus Council, and they both have over 30 years in the housing industry. But before we get started, I want to let you know there will be an opportunity for question and answers at the end of the presentation. So please enter your questions in the chat room and we'll be collecting them to be answered at the end. So without any further ado, good morning, Karen and Jim. Thank you for being here this morning with us.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Next. Okay. Good morning. Our conversation today is focused on the demographic known as solo agers in the 55 plus housing segment. Along with sharing research about solo agers, we're going to show you some possible design solutions and potential ideas for development for this buyer. First, we have a few questions for you to think about during our conversation here today. 1, are you losing market share to apartment developers? 2, are you looking to identify areas of growth for your home building company? 3, if you are not building resort-style amenities, what are you doing? And Karen?
Yeah, and as Jim noted, gaining market share is really important to all of us. And solo agers are one of the fastest growing segments of that mature consumer 55 plus market. But one of the things as you look at tapping into that market, you need to ask yourselves are, do I even understand who these consumers are? Do my marketing efforts speak to and address their concerns? And am I focusing on more traditional buyers such as couples with adult children? And am I letting these solo agers fall between the cracks? Jim?
Thank you, Karen. Next. So first, a small piece of business. I assume you're all familiar with this NAHB disclaimer. As you read through, I just want to say that we're here to offer our opinions based on what I see in my practice, and Karen has seen in the research from a couple of different sources about the demographic segment known as the solo ager. Next. Hello again. My name is Jim Riviello. Kim had introduced us earlier with Martin Architectural Group. I'm sure many of you have heard of us. We provide planning and architectural services throughout Maryland and the entire East Coast. Karen?
Yeah, and as we were already told, my name is Karen Strong. I'm with Spotlight Marketing Services, based out of Germantown, Maryland, and I participated in a variety of the research and analysis with Immersion Active Agency that specializes in mature consumers. So we're looking forward to sharing some of this information with you, and ultimately at the end, feel free to ask whatever questions you'd like.
Great. Yeah, I was going to say on another note, you can put, if you came in late, you can put comments in the chat box. We'll have plenty of time at the end to have a discussion. Next. So first, I want to talk about the typical choices for age-targeted housing and some of the attributes for each, which are a consideration to the solo ager buyer. First are single family and townhomes. which I believe are the least desired for the solo ager buyer. 1, single family and townhomes have the highest price points. 2, they typically have the largest square footage. And 3, they require the most maintenance. The next are the stacked flat condominiums. In my opinion, the stacked flat condominiums are the missing middle market for the solo ager. And this is where we see a lot of opportunity for home builders. Because 1, solo agers will be attracted to the one-story living to allow aging in place, even if they will not admit it to you. 2, the solo agers will be looking for a lower price point than can be found with a lot of typical singles and townhomes. 3, solo agers will be looking for the lock and leave lifestyle with low maintenance. And 4, the solo agers are interested in communities where they have plenty of interaction with their neighbors and diversity of neighbors and age groups. Next, we have the apartment flats for rent, which in many locations may be the solo ager's best choice. We are currently seeing a lot of new large-scale apartment projects being developed, which are attracting the solo agers at this point. These new projects, these apartment projects offer great amenity packages and desirable locations for the solo agers. And finally, there is an option for the age-restricted active adult communities. While these communities offer great amenities and some do have different types of housing choices within them, I believe age-restricted communities are becoming less desirable than suburban mixed-use communities due to lack of diversity of age groups and a concern over resale values. I also believe the national home builders are well positioned with their existing active adult brands, which would make it difficult for other home builders to compete with them, as I believe there may be a shrinking market for these communities. Next. Okay, so let's talk about the urbanization of the suburbs. One opportunity we have been involved with is mall redevelopment. I believe within and around these repurposed suburban urban mixed-use centers will be opportunities for selling to the solo agers and 55-plus buyers. As an example, here we have on the screen a mall redevelopment site outside Philadelphia. The mall started with 3 anchors connected by the mall. The site also has a supermarket on it, another big box retailer, and other services on pad sites. There's an adjacent movie theater, a hospital, and medical office, and the site is with a 5-minute drive to a commuter rail station in Philadelphia. As you can see here, one of the big box retailers was replaced with a movie theater. If you see the 3 big boxes forming a triangle in the center, you can see where the mall would have been removed. The top box up there is a movie theater. We've created an exterior center court with small retail stores. Residential was introduced on the adjacent movie theater site and where the restaurant was previously located. You can see the up in the upper right and the lower left are the apartment projects, typical wrap type building with the parking garage. But the opportunity we see here is to develop the missing middle market for the solo ager, which are stacked flat condominiums on sites around these new suburban mixed-use centers. However, while I believe projects with greater density are desired and being considered for suburban communities, we will have to fight together as an industry to upgrade zoning codes in the suburbs to accommodate more density and 3 to 4 story buildings. Next. Okay, so this slide is a rendering of one of the 2 apartments on the site I just showed you. The developer built 50% 1-bedroom units, anticipating a lot of millennial renters. It turned out that there were more 55-plus buyers than expected, and the 2-bedroom units rented faster than the 1-bedrooms. I believe a large percentage of 55-plus solo agers who ended up renting may prefer a for-sale product, would also prefer a larger unit than rental apartments typically offer, and prefer a smaller building with parking located closer to their unit, as many of these new apartment projects, as the one you see here, have shared parking garages and long walks to the units. Next. Okay. This next slide is an image of a recent apartment project adjacent to a suburban horizontal mixed-use center. The project has a terrific clubhouse amenity with a covered connection to the 2 adjacent apartment buildings. has a nice exterior resort-style amenity package, which includes an outdoor bar with TVs, fire pits, a putting green, and a resort-style pool. I show this as an example of what apartment projects are providing as they are attracting 55+ and solar ager demographic. I believe home builders can compete by providing a for-sale, mid-priced product that will have features which the solo agers want and which apartments typically do not offer. Now we're going to look a little more in depth into the solo agers. Next, Karen.
Thanks, Jim. If you'll notice on the slide, one of the things that, who are these solo agers and where are they? This researcher actually went to a lot of senior living, assisted living type of facilities expecting to find solo agers. But as the slide illustrates, Sarah, who was the interviewer, made a common misconception about the choices solo agers made when it came to housing. This sector of the senior market doesn't fall into that traditional stereotype. They're not sitting in a rocker, knitting Afghans for their grandchildren. They're out and up and about. Think about it, and I sort of chuckled about this a little bit ago, that Rolling Stones' Mick Jagger is now 76. And if you think about it, it's still rocking, out there on the stage regularly. The Charlie's Angels star, Jacqueline Smith, who was out there in those bikinis in the 70s show, is now 73. So these are not your grandma's agers. These are not your grandma's baby boomers. Next. Oops, thank you. So as you'll notice also, one of the things is you're probably going, Karen, you're bantering around this term solo agers. You know, who the heck are they? Back in the 80s and 90s, they started actually calling them SINKs and DINKs, which stood for double income, no kids, and single income, no kids. So the bottom line is that these people are, without children, they're able to actually make decisions for themselves. They're the ones that are out there, like I said, making these decisions and really have the impetus to be solely able to go out there and actually have these housing decisions that are separate from providing for their adult children or having to necessarily agree with a spouse. As the population aged from those dinks and sinks of the 80s, they morphed into the not appealing title of what were they being called elder orphans, to what is now being dubbed as the solo age. Next. Thank you. So who are these solo agers planning as it relates to future housing? Where do they plan to go? The research that we did in conjunction with Immersion Active and a woman named Carol Merrick from theseniorcare.com illustrates some of these interesting facts as it relates to these seniors. And I use the term loosely. 44% of solo agers believe their current home will not suit their needs as they age. And that's really true of people across the board for both solo agers and baby boomers in general. The challenge, however, comes when it comes to housing. The solo agers have two really competing yet interconnected desires. They want independence, but they also want a sense of community. So as solo agers may have been caregivers for their aging parents and have seen what the home circumstances were and what they needed to do to change those, make adaptations, they want to ultimately be able to age in place, and once they make their housing decision, and for that matter, lead the quality of retirement life that they want while addressing challenges that they may have seen with their adult and aging parents. More likely to relocate to urban or suburban areas as they age, that's as opposed to rural areas. And really a lot of factors come into play here of why that's the case. The primary reason is that those relocating to an urban area are more likely because they want walkability, It gets back to what Jim was talking about with these mixed use areas. They want a social environment, and they want less overall household upkeep. Those individuals, and it's a smaller percentage, we're seeing a growing percentage of those individuals wanting to move to urban and suburban areas, but the suburbanites want a peaceful, relaxed community with like-minded neighbors. So they still want less overall care. That's why they may be snowbirds and move to warmer climates, but they don't want that urbanization. They still want to have that feeling of being in a home, and they don't want to feel like they're in a box. They want to have like some green space where they can garden, etc. As far as pricing is concerned, 70% of those that are looking to relocate and buy are in that middle market. And what they're classifying as middle market, we're looking at nationwide necessarily. Obviously, this is not going to be the case in Northern California or frankly, the DC metro area. But nationwide, we're looking at between $100,000 to $500,000 spent on their next home. That would be ultimately their forever home. These people are not trying to save for their children's inheritance because they don't have any, and they can make decisions either with just a partner, or in the case of single buyers, they can make these decisions unanimously. Next. What's interesting here is this was a slide, not so much to talk about housing per se, but housing falls into this, is that 7 out of 10 of the baby boomers are looking ahead or living in the moment. So as this chart illustrates, the largest number of the boomers are living in the present or looking towards the future. And these are the segments of solo agers about seeking to make those housing decisions. Very few are looking to the past, and less than 10% of that segment that's looking to the past are in that solo ager age group. Because what's happening is those looking to the past tend to actually remain in place. They have memories, they built, it may be a family home that's been there for generations, but more and more, even with those types of homes, we're seeing that our solo agers are actually saying, okay, I have sentimental value. I may give this to, sell this to another family member, not a child, because that's not the case. But I want to actually look and find something that's going to help me achieve in my retirement and as I age, that quality of life that I actually want. Next. Now, where are the solo agers? And this is some of the things that are actually coming down the pike. What are those things that they're actually going to be looking for? So some of the things that we need to do as builders and developers and architects is really to target those solo agers at a younger and earlier time. This year, actually, and I've been saying baby boomers, and you'll hear me continually to say baby boomers because that is the bulk of the population as far as solo agers are concerned. But this year, actually, 2020, the oldest generation Xers have turned 55. And that's really sort of really turning on our heels what we think of as that solo ager. So great opportunities exist for both interaction, engagement, work, and we can really create those opportunities. Being single or in a couple without children or grandchildren doesn't mean that you don't want to have interaction. In fact, this group has proven to be extremely social, as Jim mentioned earlier as well. And the opportunities for this engagement is critical to their housing choice. They don't want to be something where they're going to be isolated or not be able to have interaction with their neighbors or be able to have friends and family over. Just in some of the 55 housing, we're seeing more and more things that really strive towards that social engagement. Safety and security, especially entry and exit. Well, that's pretty much self-explanatory that most of us are going to want some degree of security and really safety, but it also ties into that solo ager and aging in place. Number one, they're going to want security just for themselves, but secondly, looking at ways that they may be having people come into their homes. This could be caregivers, it could be a live-in caregiver, it could be somebody that's coming in only on a daily basis or maybe bi-weekly. So they're going to have access, but they want to make sure that it's secure because once again, this is a stranger although they may get to know them, but someone that that's not them coming into their place. So those are the things that they're going to want to look at as far as really making sure that things are secure, maybe a separate interest, separate codes, et cetera, for those individuals that can easily be turned on and turned off. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest things that solo agers really strive for is that sense of independence. But they want access for, as I mentioned earlier, for children, friends, and family. They may not have children of their own, but it doesn't mean that they don't have children in their lives. They're still looking for multi-generational features. It could be a niece, it could be a nephew, it could be in my case, godchildren, nieces, and nephews. And you still want them to be able to come over, maybe swim in the pool, if it's the community, maybe your own. So all of those things that are really going to improve that quality of life are still critical in the design and ultimately going to be critical in the decisions those seniors make as it relates to housing. You want design that's going to be the ease of interaction with home care and concierge. And this goes to what I was just talking about when it came to security. Thinking forward through various stages of independence, solo agers are acutely realistic about the need to think about in-home care and accessibility. Even these individuals interviewed about the possibility of full-time care were concerned about how they were going to maintain that independence. It could be a separate suite, it could be, but they're thinking, am I going to have somebody that's going to have to be coming in on a daily basis, or am I going to have somebody that's going to have to be in here permanently? It could be a live-in, could be live-in help. Next. Lastly, one of the things that we need to sort of boomers with partners, without partners, was really a significant change. As you can see over the years, in 2000, under 5 million people between 55 to 74 were living on their own without a partner. So we're seeing growing changes. So now 28 million boomers at this age are on their own. So you can see it's actually growing exponentially. It could be some of these are the circumstances of divorce where people are much more likely to do that. It's also the case of those inks and sinks actually aging more. But the thing is, even with the double income, no kids folks, as divorces increase, it means more and more of them are now solely on their own. So the group is almost 6 times larger than it was 20 years ago. And what happens is some of the things that we have to take into consideration when targeting them and marketing to them is that there's going to be one less income. So we're not going to have that double income. It's going to be one less social security check if we're looking at somebody from a retirement standpoint. And there's going to be one less caregiver. So the partner can't be necessarily the caregiver. There's going to have to be some sort of outside person because it's not going to be a child. It's not going to be a spouse or a partner. So these are the things that we really have to think about. However, regardless of these challenges, it also provides an additional opportunity for you that can make these elder orphan solo agers get over those decisions without requiring any kind of input they may have to have from an adult child. You can design specifically for them with those specific needs that we've talked about and really sort of addressing those individual and social challenges that those of us in the building industry have to keep in mind when building for these solo agers. And those are some of the, like I said, some of the challenges that we may come across. Next.
Thank you, Karen. Now we're going to switch gears back to talking about building design that goes along with what Karen just talked about. The first is our mansion concept, which is a stack flat condominium design, which we believe is very attractive for the solo ager and other 55 plus buyers. Next. Okay. So this first image is a stacked flat condominium with individual garages. There are 10 buildings oriented on a central green with a clubhouse on one end, surrounded by single family homes in a 55 plus community. There are building entries on the side facing the green as well as on the opposite side where the building's individual garages are accessed. This is an older project. However, I bring this up to illustrate the opportunity for providing stacked flat condominiums as part of a larger planned 55 plus community alongside single family homes. Next. Okay. This slide is of a 55 plus community with the same building concept as the last slide, but oriented to the street. Unlike a large apartment building, this design concept is intended to resemble a large manor home or estate home as opposed to an apartment complex. The large estate feel is created with a large entry porch with gardens, driveway pavers at the front driveways. There's some varied massing, multiple wall planes for the garage doors, so you don't have a long, continuous, boring facade, bay windows and turned gables, stone and metal accent roofing, screened meters, metal railings, and quality trim round out the facade. Next. To speak to the versatility of this design, this next photo is the same floor plan as the last photo with an exterior redesign. This project is built in Orlando, Florida. The facade has a modern appeal using hardy panel sheets and siding. The forms were simplified and color was added to accent the facade. Metal roofing was introduced on parts of the upper roof. Note that in this project, the driveway has pavers in front of all the garages, which really helps maintain a sense of a residential feel to the building. Next. Here's a photo of the rear facade of that building. Again, the use of color can be an effective way to create interest in a large facade without spending a lot of money on changes in bay windows. Next. Okay, now we'll look at the plans. The stats are up there. I'm not going to read them. They're up on the screen. What is important here for home builders is this design is an all wood frame building with individual garages, except for the stair towers and elevators shafts, which also could be done out of wood. This is more cost effective than trying to build a structured parking deck below and easier to manage the construction. What is great about this plan is it allows a unit owner to park safely in their garage, access the common corridor to the elevator and up to their unit. As Karen mentioned about that's one of the primary things the solo agers like to have. The solo agers looking for that feeling of security, a mid-priced, reasonably sized unit, lock and lease lifestyle that comes with that, and accessibility for aging in place, all features of this building design. This design can be adapted for more or less garages or more storage spaces or even an amenity space. An important feature is to have a generous lobby for the owners to meet or wait for guests to arrive or wait to be picked up. We typically look for a high level of trim finishes and furnishings in the lobby and the corridors for that feeling of a grand manor home or even feeling like you're in a hotel. Moving forward with the newest designs, we do recommend adding package rooms and deliveries and dedicated mail rooms. Again, that also depends on what the post office will allow you to do. This design concept has been successfully developed in 3 or 4 stories. Garages generally range from 16 to 26 garages a building, anywhere from 18 to 27 units a building, and most developments are often range from about 5 to 8 buildings with a clubhouse. These projects have been built for rent and for sale. Next. Okay. This slide is the upper level floor plan of the project. It is worth noting, because of the size of the building, it allows for 50% of the units to be corner units, which is a really nice selling feature. And you can even see on the front corner unit, the exterior wall is on 2.5 sides of that unit. All units are 2-bed, 2-bath with dual masters, which is an often desired layout for the 55-plus couples. Maybe they have snoring issues, they like to have separate bedrooms. But the dual masters are also very convenient for the solo ager to accommodate guests and adult children for overnight visits, or possibly other individuals to have a space for an overnight healthcare worker. And I believe Karen touched on a lot of that. What's interesting to note is the sales for this particular project support our belief in this product type for the solo ager. The first building sold out with only 25% of the units purchased by couples. Some units were sold to individuals with an elderly parent. One sold to a person with a disabled adult child, and many of the others were sold to solo agers. Currently, we are seeing as a design option also is to substitute maybe that on the D unit on the front right or front left corner, splitting that up into 2 one-bedrooms could offer you some smaller units at a lower price point if so desired, if that's what your market calls for. Also note that there are often more units in the building than garages. It doesn't have to be that way, but they often are. And additional garage buildings are typically constructed adjacent to the building. Next. Okay, so I want to get into a few images of the interior for this project in Florida. This particular project was designed with a casual feeling in the lobby. I think of it as a shared living room. Next. Yeah, okay, so this is a photo from the lobby in the other direction. You can see where we've created a couple of spaces for casual sitting around with your neighbors, maybe reading a book, or if you want to play some games or something, there's a table included, but it's got a nice casual living room feel. Next. Okay, this photo is of the typical interior unit. This unit has one large living space in the center of the unit with the bedroom suites on both sides. Next. Okay, in this photo is the same unit in the opposite direction. What works out well here is with the kitchens, with such a large open space, having a peninsula type island in these kitchens works well to help divide the space up. Next. This photo was taken of the rear corner unit. Coming into the living space is off of the interior of the corner of the unit off the corridor. You look out towards one side, towards the living room, and in another direction on 90 degrees into the dining in the other direction. The layout provides for an open plan that feels very large and allows you to have multiple defined spaces. Next. So this is the same unit taken from the kitchen, which is in the outside corner of the building. I mean, looking at this photo, you can barely tell if you're in an apartment or you're in a single family house. Okay, next. And this last photo here of the, this is that front corner unit. Again, it's got a very large open space. Off of that space is a dining area and a den, which accesses the exterior lobby. But again, you have a very large open space. However, we do have some defined areas. And I feel like, it feels like a single family home. Next. Okay, so the next product I want to talk about is fourplexes. This next product, it's a fourplex design. Next. Okay, this project was built outside Albany, New York. The builder was having trouble selling single family homes, so we combined two single family lots and added a fourplex. The project was documented as a condominium for sale. However, the builder held onto the units and rented them himself. This is a great product for a sole ager who wants to live in a traditional style family neighborhood, but does not want the expense, size, and maintenance of a single family home. The design from the street is intended to have a feel of a single family home. The roof lines were kept low on the front facade with turned gables to keep an appropriate scale for the community. Next. Here's another elevation of it, straight on from the street. Again, looking at the front elevation, you're just seeing one door and it looks like a two-car garage, even though it's two singles for two different units. We've created some variety in different colors and different textures of the elevations. Okay, next. So this is the floor plan for this building. Each unit is a flat with attached garage and generous sized kitchens. These floor plans do also provide a kind of a dual master concept. It's not exactly master, but they have separated bedrooms. The ground floor units are accessible for aging in place, which is great. And if you look at the upper right unit, the den, that's was designed to be an optional second bedroom. The stats for the project are there on the right. Next. Okay, so this is the second floor for that building. Again, they're very similar to the units below, where we have dual master layouts and large kitchens. The unit on the right, we're able to take advantage of a bonus space over top of the garages. Okay, next. I included an interior elevation here of the lower unit of the ground floor unit. Hard surface floorings and nice level trim and finishes have been provided on all the units. We believe incorporating these type of multifamily units into a single family development would be attractive for sole agers or for even younger single individuals looking to stay close by Maybe they have other family in the development. Another idea may be to offer a two-story master down on one side of the duplex for a multi-generational unit and a threeplex design. So there's lots of different opportunities out there to address solo agers and people looking for some at a little bit lower price point. Next. Karen will now recap the solo ager demographics for you.
Thank you, Jim. We're going to go through some information, and this data was combined in conjunction with a research statistician named Matt Thornhill that we did in conjunction with BB&T Bank and Immersion Active, the agency. And this really sort of is looking at baby boomers across but solo agers in particular. This first slide really discusses how that longer horizon explains the general lack of concern, their concern about growing older. Because as I mentioned earlier, these people are not sitting in rockers. They're really sort of being active and healthy. And so we talk about what are their primary areas of concern. These slides show what was very important and what was moderately important. So that's what the numbers combined to the left indicate, that sum total. And as you can see, the most important factor for these individuals is really being able to live independently, because they don't want to have to be dependent upon other folks to come in. They recognize that there may be a need down the road, but that's not the most important. They want to be able to live independently. They don't want to have to be resigned to a skilled nursing facility until it's absolutely necessary, or even assisted living. Now, as we scroll down on that page, you'll notice that the least important thing, as far as they're concerned, is leaving an inheritance to their kids. So their bottom line is, I'm going to live my life for me. Some are going to think about, but really that's because these are boomers as a whole and not necessarily just solo agers. But even looking at boomers that have children, that's really sort of secondary as far as their concerns. They don't want to be dependent. They do moderately think about, what they're going to have to do as far as Alzheimer and dementia or outliving their money, because we are living longer. But being able to live independently, which, of course, directly impacts our housing decisions, is really the top concern for these folks. Next. Okay, thank you. And now these are items that people feel that they actually have some control about. And we asked two separate things. How do you feel that people in your age group feel about that? That's the top graph. And then how do you feel personally that how you're doing? This is one of those questions where sometimes you get really a big disparity between the answers, because you think, okay, there are people in this baby boomer, senior, mature consumer group that are, say, 55 to 75, and you go, okay, those are old people. It's sort of like what happened during this pandemic right now, where, I go, oh, I'm not gonna really, and I'm over 50 though, and they were like, Karen, you need to stay in your house. And I go, but I'm not one of those old people. Those are the old people. So people oftentimes have a different perception of other people in their age group versus themselves. As the slide shows, there's pretty much agreement as to what is important, but the data does show that a small margin of respondents think that they are personally doing better than the group as a whole. And it gets back to what I was just saying. With the exception of keeping a job, there's pretty much agreement across the board as far as what individuals want and what they think their age group as a whole wants. And like I said, this is a lot of information. We can provide this for you after the fact. Next. Thank you. So we were discussing, the majority want to stay where they are. A lot of people are happy with their homes, but when it comes to the solo agers, they also recognize that their homes may not meet the needs of them as they age. So one of the things that we are really sort of taking into consideration is, where are they and where do they want to go? So right now, where they are, the bulk of them are in traditional neighborhoods across all ages. A smaller percentage are in rural communities. And you can see right now, as we look at the data, and this survey was conducted in 2019, so this was accurate as of last year, only a small percentage are in age-restricted communities, 5%, senior living, 2%, and then assisted living, less than 2%. You know, it's a fraction of 1%. And then there's other falls into things like co-housing, which is a growing trend, but there's things like that that fall into that bucket. As you can see, as people are looking to where do you plan to be in the future, and this is what we're talking about in 5 to 10 years, you can see that there is a 4% growth in as far as baby boomers when they're looking at where they want to be. As you can see, from 2% in these three areas to 6% anticipate being there in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's assisted living, senior living. But one of the things that I think we, as like I said, as builders, developers, architects need to be acutely aware of, and Jim sort of mentioned this, is that if you'll notice that 5% are currently in age-targeted, age-restricted communities, but in 5 to 10 years, 10% of those people anticipate being in that. That's a growth of over 5 million people that plan to move from this current time to by 2030 to 2035 to be in age-targeted or age-restricted communities. So that's a huge market from which we can tap into. Okay. Next. Okay. Now, like I said, a lot of people really want to, you know, like I said, want to sort of stay where they are as far as, are they looking at being, you know, having where they are, but they want to have a place ideally without outside help. They want to sort of go, hey, if I can, I'd like help from friends and family, not really anticipating that they may need help from an outside service. It could be somebody coming in temporarily, it could be overnight help, as Jim mentioned in some of his designs, that they're really looking at that possibility. But even those self-reported as being in poor health, that's like saying, hey, I know I need help. Even those people wanted to stay at home. They didn't want to have to be in a skilled nursing facility. So really trying to accommodate the population as broadly as we can is really critical to, excuse me, as critical as possible from a design standpoint. Most of the, like I said, the large percentage here are going to own a home without outside help. They want to, that's their preferred living situation. They want to own a home with help from friends and family. But once again, when we talk about the solo agers, while there are friends and family, they're not going to have the same access to those adult children caregivers. They're not going to be able to, say, move in with a adult child, or frankly, in some circumstances, an adult grandchild, as I've seen, that they're really going to have to be aware of having that situation and really being able to have the potential for in-home help, paid help, or some sort of community services. It could be via, you know, say, you know, the VA or community senior service centers, or even some church services that provide help for those seniors in their communities. Excuse me, sorry about that. Next. Okay, now what, you know, we talked about that these people are looking to move somewhat, you know, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, there was that population growth that we're looking to move towards 55 plus communities, or targeted age restricted communities. But we also took back and said, let's shorten that move time, and let's see what percentage of people are actually looking to move within the next 3 to 5 years. Because, you know, somebody saying, I'm going to move in 10 years, or I'm going to move in 15 years, is really, that's a long sales arc. And they're probably going to be sort of thinking in their mind, but they're not going to be actively searching. Whereas if you shorten that time and said, hey, people that are going to be moving in 3 years, they may now actually be thinking, hey, where do I want to move? Do I want to move to Florida or Arizona? Do I want to stay in the Northeast? All of those kinds of decisions. But what's interesting here is that if you'll notice, and these two are the two that we sort of have tallied here are highly likely and very likely. So these are people that are pretty much assured that they're planning to move within the next 3 to 5 years. But what's interesting is that the younger boomers, 25% of them are looking to move in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think once again, that goes into the fact of those solo agers, because solo agers take up a larger percentage of these younger boomers than of the older boomers. And so they are actually, if one thing is clear, people are generally optimistic about their own health and the need for care. And even with poor health, like I said, they want to stay where they are. But they are also realistic in that generally, they're going to have to potentially move to a place that can be more accommodating. So 25% of the younger boomers, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in that you want to tap into those younger boomers and those younger solo agers, because they're making those decisions now. And because they are single without necessarily any kind of resources around them from a caregiver standpoint, you want to reach out to them as early as possible and really sort of tap into them, because, most of them go, I don't want to be 75 and trying to find a home. Some of them are even saying, I want to be 65 and trying to find a home. I want to try and find my forever home as soon as I can, make that final, air quotes, move and be there. Whereas, like I said, you get people that are really on the cusp of those retirement ages and really sort of are going, okay, I'm retired now. Now's the time where I'm starting to sort of think maybe I need to move in the next 3 to 5 years and really find that home. But most of them are already somewhat retired or in that place. They're sort of now just thinking about, I want to actually make that change. So tapping into those consumers at an earlier age is absolutely critical. And if you don't, you're really missing out on potential gain of market share that Jim had mentioned earlier was so important. Next, and Jim?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Karen. We're almost there. I want to go into a couple design ideas we have. This first one we call Lux 8 isn't exactly for solo ager, but I thought it'd be interesting to share. It kind of came out of doing those mansion products. This is more for a wealthy 55 plus buyer. I presented this concept we call the Lux 8 to a number of developers and industry consultants who all said they believe there is a good market. Well, there is a market for a high-end luxury multifamily product. Next. Okay, so this design concept started with the thought that someone moving from a large single-family home, for example, maybe did not want to give up their 2-car garage. Maybe they have a classic car hobby, or they want to have a wood shop in their garage, or maybe the couple who would like to just be able to purchase a luxury home with all the advantages of multifamily living that we have been discussing here today. Again, the stats are up on the screen, what we have here. But the ground floor here shown offers 2-car garages for each of the 8 units in the building on the 2 floors above. Additional storage space is also provided, as well as a common area to greet your guests or share some time with other residents. Next. Okay, so these are the upper floor plans here. Each floor is designed with 4 units. 2 of the units are 2,100 square foot. The other 2 units would be 2,500 square feet. The floor plans for each unit incorporate a kind of a dual master design in it. They're not physically separated, but they're 2 masters. And then there's a huge living space for people who like to entertain. This design allows for each unit to be a corner unit. It also allows for aging in place. There's an elevator involved. It can be a lock and leave lifestyle, and it's a unit. The size of the unit and the garage space is something you would find in a single family home. Okay, next. This is an example of potentially maybe an elevation for this, more in a traditional style. There's lots of different styles this could be designed towards. Next. Oops. Next. And then here's that same building. We kind of did up a sketch of what might be more of a more modern take on it. But what I'd like to say is, as an idea, I mean, just imagine constructing a building or two like this next to a marina on the Chesapeake. I think there could be a market for something like this. Next. So finally, I want to talk about the idea of a triplex concept to target solo agers and as an infill product, maybe for infill sites in older established communities. Next. Okay, so here's a plan for a small triplex building. The ground floor unit is about 1,120 gross square feet heated. The upper units are about 1,209.35 square foot heated. The overall footprint is 40 foot wide and 58 foot deep. While this design has only one of the three units on the ground floor to accommodate aging in place, the design could serve as a combination of active solar ager and millennial, looking for less space at a lower price point. I see this concept as an option for builders to build some density on some infill sites in older communities. Next. Next. Yeah, okay. So, and here's an image of that front facade for the threeplex design. I think as builders and architects, we need to think about how to develop new designs for suburban infill projects, which could offer more affordability and density and target the 55 plus solo ager buyers, as well as millennials. If we see the millennials kind of want some similar things to solo agers. Okay, next. So Karen, I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we have provided you with some ideas to think about and provide enough information on solar agers to have everyone consider designing for them in their next 55 plus project. Now for my shameless plug on the 55 plus Housing Council. If you like sharing ideas with other builders and related professionals in our industry, please consider joining the 55 plus Housing Council. I have recently gotten involved with the 55 Housing Council on a national level and have met some great people, but also would like to be able to bring those ideas back to an exchange locally with a local 55 plus council. For only $100 in addition to your NAHB membership dues, you'll be treated to a quarterly digital magazine and monthly webinars for members only. Back issues of the digital magazine can be downloaded for about 2 years back. At the IBS this year, I was part of the 55 plus membership committee. We established a goal to grow to 3,000 members over the next 2 years. It was highly debated, but we think we can maybe get there. We are currently at 1,100 as of the show. I'm hoping all of you will consider it and help us achieve our goal. Karen, do you have any further thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Jim and I met via the 55 plus Housing Council, and it's just a great resource for exchanging ideas. They're a cross-section of people from builders to developers to architects to folks like myself that are in the marketing field. So you can really get a wealth of knowledge from the membership. Additionally, and I just want us to throw this in as well, if you would like an infographic on some of the information that I shared as far as the 55, the solo agers and what they're looking at as far as housing trends, we'll be able to send that out to you as well. But the council is a wealth of information and a great both networking and learning opportunity.
Okay, next.
Jim?
Yeah, next. Okay, so this is our last slide. It's just some of our contact information. I also want to thank Karen for stepping in. The original person from Immersion Active, we did this presentation for at the IBS 55 Central. It went on in different directions. So thank you, Karen, for stepping in and keeping this going. I really enjoyed having you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. That concludes our part of our presentation. I guess Carrie or Griffin, if we want to start looking at some chat questions.
Or are there any questions?
All right. Well, I see 3 there under chat, so I don't know. Maybe there's something we can talk about.
Yeah, hang on one second, Jim.
Sure.
I do not see any questions in the chat. Currently, Kim, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't. It was a great presentation, though, that I would like to mention.
Yeah.
Well, like Jim said, if you think of questions, because sometimes you may hang up and you may go back and you go, oh, I meant to ask Jim or Karen this. Like I said, feel free to take our information. It has our email addresses on the slide that's up right now. Feel free to reach out to either of us after the fact if you have some questions. And like I said, Griffin or Kim, would they be able to get this this presentation? Is there going to be a way to download that either off of the MBIA website or because I know a lot of it was both a lot of designs as well as data, so I know that's sort of hard to.
Yeah, Karen. Yeah, we did record the presentation, so we should be able to share this via our website through the council, and anybody who has questions about the presentation or the council in general, we'll be able to get that to them.
Perfect.
Ross, hang on a second.
Looks like there are questions coming in.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Yeah, Ross, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I just posted something there on the chat, but I tuned in late. I apologize, but did you guys get into any prognosticating about the impact of people 55 and older being unwilling to live in a group housing, whatever that means to them? And I know that it means different things to different people, but for some people it's an apartment building, a high rise. For other people, it's just even being in a duplex would be too much for them. I know that's dipping into psychology and not design, but frankly, I think one informs the other.
I don't think we didn't specifically, I guess, get into that.
I mean, I guess rather than just throw it at you, I would say I've heard from a couple of different owners of land that's entitled for seniors housing basically say, boy, I'm glad we didn't pull the trigger on that. That's dead.
Yes, I hear what you're saying about that. A lot of people don't want to go into senior housing. They're looking for other opportunities to age in place and stay where they're at. And that was one of the focus of the type of designs we're looking to, we think is there. There's a missing middle market there because, you try to go to a single family home. They're nice, but they're really large and expensive. We're looking, trying to find opportunities for people to live in a more moderate priced home that's got an elevator, you can age in place, and you can stay there for a long time.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm still on, but I think your presentation addressed that kind of implicitly, and I think you did a really great job, and I love looking at those designs.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just wondering what, if anything, you guys, being practitioners in the market, are hearing from folks as far as, I guess some of it's knee-jerk reactions, but.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're seeing also just from a research standpoint is that you're right. It's what we're finding is people's perception of what they view as group housing. In other words, some people hear that and they immediately think, oh, does that mean a nursing home or some sort of other assisted living type? Or sometimes they'll hear 55 plus and think, oh, it's really, old people, where it's really a much more diverse audience. So I think a lot of those challenges can be overcome to some degree, accurately messaging what it is that's being presented and to that consumer. In other words, don't just slap a label on it and say, hey, we've got something for your active adult, or we've got something for your senior, things of that nature, because people's perception is reality when it comes to the decision, and it's particularly something with housing. People are very, very cautious of making that final decision and not really sort of making that knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, right. I mean, and maybe something that can assuage some of that is the like that 4-unit building that you showed. I would market that as being like contactless group living, because everybody wants to talk about everything being contactless. Well, frankly, you can get to your garage and or to your, you know, your sidewalk, your lead walk, your front door without ever interacting with one of your other group housing compatriots.
Yes, no, that's true. And that goes back to what Karen was saying. You know, a lot of people, they still want to kind of stay in the same type of environment that they have. So if you like living in a single family community and you can, you know, pop a few of these things in a new community or use it as infill, that gives you that opportunity to stay where you want to stay, but then, you know, live the lifestyle you want as well. So that's a great point.
Yeah. Jim, what are you seeing? I see that you're from Philly. What are you seeing from a zoning standpoint with these? I mean, it's truly mixed use, really, when you think about it, the different densities. Is it fairly easy to get that through without having to market it as just a 55 and older? Because I think that's like, I mean, that's borne out in your data that Karen showed, which says that people don't want to be in a community necessarily that's for old people, so to speak.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, you know, that's why we got talking about those, the urbanization of the suburbs and creating products for these people in these semi-urban areas in the suburbs. And it's interesting because like the one slide I had of the apartment with the great exterior amenities, you know, the whole complex had been developed. There's all kinds of shopping and retail there. But it's funny because you had the apartment choice, and then you just had Toll Brothers came in with, you know, really large master downtowns, and Lennar came in with stacked town. I think it was Lennar, or it was Ryan came in with stacked townhomes. And you know, and so if you really want to purchase something and have these things, I mean, it wasn't there in this whole big development. I haven't really run across too many problems with zoning at this point, but I know that's going to be an issue as you know you try to redevelop areas that need to be redeveloped.
I'll be quiet now. I'm super fascinated by everything that you guys presented. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks, Ross. We had a question from Hillary. Hillary, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Yeah, I know you had a question about accessibility. Did you want to elaborate on that at all?
No, I'd want them to tell me what they think about accessibility. I am interested in all the ways that the different municipalities are now interpreting how much accessibility has to be made available to different projects.
Yeah, there's a couple of things you have to look at. First, you have to look at the Federal Fair Housing Act, which is it's a federal law which states can't touch, you know. It's pretty basic though. It gives you minimal allowable accessibility. Then you start to look at the state and local building codes, which often reference the ANSI standards, which in that case, then, you know, you're required to comply and, you know, have like 5% of units that are adaptable for wheelchair users. In the residential market, there's no requirement to have a fully accessible, you know, with the grab bars put in. Is typically not a requirement unless somebody has something specific at a local level. They're always designed to be adaptable so you can come in and change it. But the important thing is structurally, you know, you can accessibly get in, you have wide doors, you know what I mean? You have those spaces that you can't change later. That's the important thing to have designed in from the start. I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it did.
I'm sorry. Yes, it did.
Okay.
I have to keep muting and unmuting.
Oh.
Anybody have anything else they want to add or ask? Any other questions we're seeing? Anything from the audience? Okay, well, before we wrap up, Kim, I'll go one more time. Do you have anything you want to add here at the end before we kind of wrap this up, or?
I just want to encourage everyone that's interested in being on the 55 plus council or even thinking about it to send their information to you so we can revitalize that, the list that we had of the, or update the 55 council list and get it out to everyone for our next meeting.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. The council, this is one of our priority councils that we're really looking to grow in over the next year, really. So I would really encourage, if you have any interest or any questions, please reach out to me and consider joining the council. It's a great group. We're really going to be trying to get more events going and hopefully not all webinars, but these are fantastic. So please let me know. And I'll defer to Jim and Karen. Anything you guys want to say while we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today.
Yes, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay. Well, thank you, Jim and Karen. It was excellent. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Kim, for kind of giving the introductions, and everybody out there, stay safe. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thanks, Griffin.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.